Kadarius Toney versus Amon-Ra St. Brown, similar rookie draft cost, yet their profiles are very different. That and more this week on the Football Guys Dynasty Show. I'm your host, Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And back to the featured topic at hand, which is you get to the mid-late second round, you've got wide receiver options. It's pretty much a barren wasteland for running backs. Tight ends are starting to get involved beyond Kyle Pitts. And frankly, quarterbacks, even if it's a start one, largely gone by that point in time. So Kadarius Toney, first round pedigree. Amon-Ra St. Brown, fourth round pedigree. And yet, the higher pedigree in Toney goes to a blocked landing spot, perceived that way with the Giants. You got Amon-Ra St. Brown going to a relative wide open landing spot with the Detroit Lions. There's already talk and buzz coming out of rookie camp. So let's put an asterisk on rookie camp with Amon-Ra St. Brown that he could be heavily utilized inside, outside. And frankly, Dynasty GMs are looking around saying, what will stop Amon-Ra St. Brown from being a rookie breakout and rookie impact player? So, Jordan, we need to discuss this. It's a non-optimal zone typically of rookie drafts when you get to that level. However, these are two wide receivers that have their perks depending on what you're looking for. Let's break this down because it is a critical zone when you get to the 15, 20-ish overall zone in one quarterback.
Yeah, I mean, the easiest place to start is what's the historical hit rate of fourth round wide receivers? And if you look over the first 3 years of their career, it's 4%. So that's 1 out of 25. So, and good luck guessing it because I've done research and I've talked about it in the past that we're of all the things we're bad at, selecting the
outliers,
the day 3 wide receiver hit. I think we've done it once, and the ADP has gotten that right once in 13 years, and that's Mike Williams, and that's going back since we have reliable ADP to 2008. So. That's the only time they've ever really gotten that right. So that's the concern that I have is just trying to pick that is really bad. And I have questions about his profile as well. Listen, Kadarius Toney is a significantly different pedigree. One thing that I think we know is depending on how you measure it, he has a week, if at all, a breakout, and that's a term, and it basically an analytics term talking about how much of a share of your offensive production you had in college. Now, I measure him for a very minimal breakout that he had a dominator rating of 20%. That's not great, but you just look at that subset of guys, and it's a lot better than the fourth round guys at wide receiver. So for me, it's a clear Kadarius Toney. I mean, Kadarius Toney represents the end of a tier for me in rookie drafts, where it's basically if he's the last guy there, you just take the first round wide receiver pedigree and you move on. And that's probably 18, 20 in a startup draft and a super flex rookie draft. And listen, it's not particularly glamorous, but nothing after that is either. And, to quote Queen, there ain't no beauty queens in this locality. So I'm just, I'm not a huge fan of going real low on pedigree, thinking we can get it right when we're not particularly well suited to do so.
Yeah, and there's two types of wide receivers in round 2 in rookie drafts. If you are going to gravitate to that position, first of all, it's a bad historical positional bet. So this is not where you want to go. Now, every once in a while, like today, I was in a draft. Somehow, Rashad Bateman made it to 201. So does that really count? Not really. His ADP is higher than that. But again, if you get first rounders dripping to that range, and the other thing I would say, another little caveat would be an elite metric profile. So not very good, elite. And you do have Rondale Moore. You do have Terrace Marshall. So if you are going to say, I'm going to make exceptions, I know I'm going suboptimal here. I like bets like that. But also, I would say round 1 pedigree applies here. So Kadarius Toney has that. He's going to have plenty of allegiance.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, his chances of being a hit are 2, 3, 4x that of Amon-Ra St. Brown. And that's important. And you mentioned the early hit rate for these day 3 guys. It takes them a while. The odds of them actually coming out and being a number 1, number 2 wide receiver out of the gate with meaningful volume, is such a grain in the sand on the beach scenario. So be very careful. And again, I like Amon-Ra St. Brown. He is a top 5% metric prospect score for me in my model. So I am a fan of Amon-Ra St. Brown. Now, I would have been a fan a little more at the price point here with day 2 pedigree. There's a pretty substantial drop off to day 3. So be careful. And and 2% of them, you said 4% overall, 2% of round 4 wide receivers end up hitting in year 1. And like you said, the market is not good at this. We are not good at this. Right. This is like the Jeff Janis, theory here of like, right. You like a great prospect and you gravitate towards it. And I'm going to throw the Devy angle here, which is Amon-Ra St. Brown was on the Dynasty Devy consciousness and drafting for the better part of his career. And that means he just, Equanimeous St. Brown style, is going to have more appeal, more allegiance, and more stickiness higher in rookie drafts. So just be careful about, well, I saw him at USC and I liked him and I drafted him, in the 3rd or 4th round of my Devy draft a couple years ago. We were resetting the clock here. You get the NFL data point, you get the pre-draft process. Here we are. You have to reassess. So that's one faction of the dynasty marketplace that I would say tends to elevate guys, especially day 3 wide receivers, that don't really deserve it. The Seth Williams is out there. I've seen him drafted in 4-round rookie drafts. You got to be really careful of these types of scenarios. And I would say I always harken back to a case like Preston Williams. I mean, that's an absolute whirlwind success story from, falling in the draft. Where is he? But I like the profile. Where is he? All Miami does is draft over him, bring in guys, and he's buried just like he was, outside of that moment in time where there were some injuries and he was popping a little bit, but that's it. It's moments in time. And I think this great situation, TJ Hawkinson and DeAndre Swift, and what I would say is even Tyrell Williams, who has had 3,100 yards in his career, 4 straight seasons up until last year of 600 plus yards. Tyrell Williams can play. He's actually my super sleeper. He's out there on waiver wires. He's been here. He's done something in the NFL. And you got Rashad Perriman, round 1 pick. Reclamation tour is fully in effect here, but 2,000 total yards in his career. And so to say that that Amon-Ra St. Brown is a good bet to supplant either of those guys or supplant Hawkinson in the pecking order. DeAndre Swift is probably going to see more targets. And I looked at the Football Guys projection currently, has him for wide receiver 3 on the team in yards. Fair. Behind Hawkinson as well, around the same reception projection as DeAndre Swift. What does that mean? I kind of look back in your neck of the woods in Buffalo. I mean, isn't a guy like Gabriel Davis like a rousing year 1 success? Like right. That is from the day 3 variety. And what happened? Oh, well, Stephon Diggs is there, so we could just stop any big conversations. And then they got Cole Beasley. And then what do? Bring in Emmanuel Sanders, who's going to have a role. What did they do? He's still behind. Nice story. But, getting that 500-600 yards, 4 or 5 touchdowns, that would be a rousing success for Amon-Ra St. Brown. I would say, what does that mean? Because I know Gabriel Davis, I got to late in the season trying to flip him in the offseason. It says right here by ADP, he should be worth an early 2nd round pick. I say BS. There's no, right. I couldn't get anything close to that. Right. I offered him like with a mid-second to get to the late 1st, and you would think that would be relatively easy by that valuation. Nope. I didn't sell 1 single share. So that's what a day 3 pedigree that at wide receiver will do for you. Nice story. You tap someone on the head like they just got an infield single in Little League, and you're like, great job, Johnny, but we're not taking you to ice cream. Great job. So I just say, if that is a rousing success, where are we going with Amon-Ra St. Brown?
Yeah, I'm with you. And I think the other way to look at this is the survivor, the survival rate, which is basically how often a team drafts a wide receiver over your pedigree, right? That drafts a wide receiver earlier than you. And we got to re-update the numbers because we're a little higher now that Philadelphia has done it. But so I'd have to go back and look at that, but it's going to be 95+% of the time for first round wide receivers, they survive a year. Only 60% of fourth round wide receivers do. So that's already a huge threat. When you go out 3 years, it's 90% of first round wide receivers survive after 3 years. When you look at fourth round wide receivers, 15%. So what's the arc that we're looking at?
Yeah, and round 4, let's look at the Lions situation. So this is different than if they had Kenny Golladay there and Marvin Jones, and now they drafted Amon-Ra St. Brown. If you combined, and we don't look at that because that's going to be a super difficult, slippery slope to track, but between a notable free agent signing next offseason and drafting day 2 or higher, look at the Lions depth chart. How do they not do 1, 2, maybe even 3 things in that passing game? Something going on in terms of targets. And that's, again, Tyrell Williams, as much as I talked him up for 7 seconds, he is going to be a road apple. Big picture. The likelihood is he's going to be on this team and doing something notable in 2022 is near zero. So this is a wide open passing game. But what I always say is wait till they reset the clock here. Wait till they reshuffle the dominoes and the puzzle pieces. When they get to the offseason, I mean, the number you said, if you're factoring in situation of what does this look like for the Lions passing game, the odds are really high that they're drafting somebody high that is going to be projected to take Amon-Ra St. Brown's job, whatever that is, or they're giving somebody, again, even in a rebuild, whatever you think their team dynamic is there, they're going to want a guy, a go-to guy. And you have Juju out there, Will Fuller. I mean, they're going to have options, plenty of options. So I would just say the odds of them giving, 3 years, $45 million to somebody or drafting a notable is very high in the offseason. So whatever this looks like, again, I'll just target back. Gabriel Davis is a success, and you still have someone you're kind of saying, where do I sit here with my wide receiver 6, 7, 8 on my roster?
Yeah. I think the big takeaway from this Detroit experience this offseason is Hockenson is going to get fed. The other thing that people aren't talking about, again, I'm not overly, big on day 3 wide receivers. That's not really, they're not going to put that on my headstone. But Quintez Cephus is a guy that no one appears to be talking about, who was like threshold not bad last year. Again,
actually played last year, right?
Correct. And played, some of his ancillary stats were not bad when you sort of look at it. Again, I'm not going to get over the moon on these until I think to
arbitrage.
Right. To really, really move the needle for me, you need to be excellent as a day 3 wide receiver for me to spend much attention caring, just because they don't make a difference historically. Outside of the rare case. And those are the ones you kind of can see in some way, shape, or form. They've got a massive uptick in their stats. So Quintez Cephus probably not there. But again, if you gave me even money, I think Quintez Cephus at least warrants exploring taking him over
210 for Amon-Ra St. Brown and 4th round pick equivalency or something for Quintez Cephus, or heck, in August might get dropped. Yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And I think it's not, whatever odds you would put on that they're better. I mean, we've seen this story before. I'm not a big believer. And I think Cephus was actually decent last year. So that would be sort of my thought on it. The other thing, I mean, I look at this offense and I don't see any way that Hockenson is just not, outside of injury. I mean, Hockenson is going to eat and Swift is going to eat. And I think of the guys drafted last year, of the running backs drafted last year, if you told me that one of them will finish as a running back 1 overall, the running back 1 in a season, I think DeAndre Swift's the best bet. And I know I'm out on a limb there, and I did some polling on this, and he's at best 3rd, probably closer to 4th in that ranking. I mean, this is a scenario. This is a 110 target Kamara like scenario. Again, I'm not comping him to Kamara. I'm comping the situation to how Kamara went all those targets. You think about how David Johnson had that,
or McCaffrey, or you could see that sort of usage scenario, especially if they're trailing, right? I mean, he's the type that could get Theo Riddick, Danny Woodhead, Ray Rice. I remember years ago where it's like you see in the 4th quarter he got 6 catches.
Right.
type scenarios. So just
yeah.
like if he gets 100 catches, it's going to be hard to keep him out of the top 6 or 7 in PPR at a minimum.
Yeah.
Even if things are an S show as a run game, and touchdowns are down. So
right. The other thing too is bad offenses haven't really, there's still upside for good running backs in bad offenses, right? Because that's
garbage time for days. I mean, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I would say that's good news for a pass catching running back.
Right. Yeah, for sure. And suboptimal approach to offense is to run the ball a lot. So if they're going to run the ball a lot, right, Swift is going to have lots of opportunities with an offense that's going to be performing suboptimally. That's how you kind of look at this. You get a kind of a disjointed situation. So, yeah, was I think the big story out of the Amon-Ra St. Brown experience is that the best arbitrage to bet against him is taking a huge position on Hockenson and Swift.
Yeah, and going back to Kadarius Toney, and I would just mention this. So we talked about how he is a much preferred play in that rookie zone, but I would remind folks that you need to have a plan, because if Kadarius Toney comes out and he has 58 targets this year on again, Daniel Jones out there and not, doing great things, he's still kind of miring around in that mid QB. He's more of a runner than a great passer. They've got plenty of weapons there. They have surrounded him. This is like a Denver scenario of like, can we get a quarterback? And is our quarterback the guy? So they have that question going on, but the weapons are pretty sound, but it's crowded. It's congested. So if you draft Kadarius Toney, you need to know, and that's why I always caution people with these types of wide receiver bets. So right now, if you got 4, 5, 6 guys, you start adding Toney and 2 or 3 late guys and a waiver wire guy, you're bulging at 9 or 10 guys. Be careful, because are you going to be sticky with Kadarius Toney? Because there's no point if you draft a round 1 guy, and again, it doesn't look like this is going to be some massive year 1 breakout. He just takes the Giants offense by storm. I would be really surprised if that occurs. So if you're not going to be sticky into 2022 with that roster spot, and you're going to be looking over your shoulder being like, I'd really like to pick up this primary backup running back in week 2. Jordan Chad been talking about him a little bit. He's an injury away. This could be a Mike Davis type situation, but you don't pull the trigger because you're like, I took Kadarius Toney at 206 and I can't make that move. So I rewind the tape and say, then don't make the pick. So that's the big thing. Trade the pick for something else, a player you like. Kick the can, trade down, get a future second as well. Like, just don't burn the roster spot. So if you take Kadarius Toney and just wide receivers in general, you've got to make sure you're going to be sticky, because a lot of times it's year 2, year 3. Yeah, you might have some sell windows, but be careful, because that sunken cost can really come to bite you when there's better ways to spend that roster spot, and yet you feel held back and handcuffed because of the pick you made back in May, June.
Yeah, totally. By the way, did you see the picture of Mike Davis today?
Oh, AJ Dillon, right? Oh, was it different uniform or yeah? That's got to be a mistake, right?
It's a quad. He's a quad model. Yeah,
Quadzilla. Yeah.
But I have a good story for you, by the way. On the Mike
I thought
Davis
those were Dillon's
front.
calves.
Yeah.
I thought those were Barkley's calves after he's been working in rehab.
Yeah, we saw the other side of AJ Dillon, so I'm not sure. I can't confirm. So I have a funny story for you on now that you mentioned Mike Davis. We're 2 big Mike Davis fans around these parts, and I got a message today from someone that says, "Hey, I'm looking to add. I see you got Mike Davis. I'm looking for some cheap running back help for 2021. You interested in trade?" And I was like, "That's what your definition of cheap is," because I think you and I have a different version of value.
You're like, Melvin Gordon might be cheaper. You're like, what do you mean by that?
Yeah. I don't know.
I typically sell production for peanuts. You have come to the right store.
Right. I'll take a third
I'm viewing Jordan with running back production like a pawn shop. I'm feeling like I'm going to go in there and get something for 30 cents on the dollar.
Right.
Oh,
the third and the fourth that he offered in 2022 really wasn't.
Yeah. So how does your roster look now without Mike Davis?
Right.
That worked out. Oh man.
Yeah.
Wow. And that was the player that they so chose. Yeah. You're like, you may be able to get that deal done if Mike Davis gets hurt. They sign LeVeon Bell and they go into the supplemental draft and draft somebody.
Right.
Maybe.
Can I say? I don't know. There's probably a bias to what I'm about to say because we have a lot of them, or I have a lot of him. But there has been no player on a per share basis that I've received more just cold call inquiries on than Mike Davis, and it's not close in terms of he's by far the most that I've received, and per time I actually have him on a roster, per share. It's outrageous how many inquiries I've received. So he's one that I'm definitely interested sort of what the market's gonna, a third and a fourth ain't it, but if it's gonna be future first type valuations, we're trending in that direction.
Yeah, well, I think you have to, historically you have to take that, because he is very centric to this year. He's very centric to a specific opportunity. And I've been kind of, I'm feeling this a little bit, and I'm putting it out there. This isn't predictive, but Atlanta strikes me as the depth chart. I mean, you look, it's Cordell Patterson. I mean, people are drafting in the 4th round. Who's they had some rookie come in, but they've got Kadri Allison. They've got nothing going on. I mean, Ito Smith is a relic. I mean, the fact that they cut him,
he got cut.
First of all, good on Atlanta for finally moving on. They got my emails. they read the billboard I put up in Atlanta. But say anybody but Ito Smith. But I look at this depth chart, and what scares you, you're like, okay, it's Mike Davis for the win. We got gravitating towards adding somebody. And let's look out there. The 2 names that are out there, LeVeon Bell and Todd Gurley. So let's not put it past them to get all the way through. And again, Mike Davis might be their absolute plan, and all this is, conjecture. But this is one of the few depth charts where Atlanta cannot feel good about running back 2+. They can't. So they've got a kick returner and former wide receiver as their, de facto running back 2 right now. So yeah, all I'm saying is bringing back Gurley. I mean, that affects Mike Davis. Even if Mike Davis is still the starter, that affects him more than it does now. And then Le'Veon Bell, he's one of the few guys out there that could come in August, September, whatever, and end up being the 1A. So that's the one thing I would say, a Devonta Freeman-like situation where it could be a late ad. But as of now, I mean, it seems like you cannot trade away Mike Davis. And at minimum, like you said, future first sort of mentality. But even if you're venturing, I mean, trade him for 206, you're outside a prime zone there. You got to be really careful. And because the worst case is he's a primary, even if everything goes completely sideways on him, they sign Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell is the starter. Mike Davis is still in a McCaffrey bird dog seat like he was a year ago of an injury, little cascade, little, get back in shape sort of situation with Le'Veon Bell, and you're back in the same situation and cooking with gas. So be careful.
Yeah, I wouldn't trade Mike Davis straight up for any pick after Mac Jones and Trey Sermon. Like, I wouldn't. I don't know about you. Like, there's no, like, I don't know, Bateman, I guess we could talk about with that, but outside of that,
that's the zone, yeah. So it's like that's early second in Superflex, and that's late first in so that's the zone. And I don't really think, I mean, you can answer this a little better than I haven't seen anybody pay that. Actually, an executed deal with the equivalency of that, if it's a 2-for-2 or whatever, that Mike Davis is going for a late first. I just don't think he's going to have the cachet. He didn't really even. Did he have the cachet? Did he venture all the way there last season when he was actually starting and churning it out?
Like, you get a second for him, but the problem is I think this is a different year for him. It was a closed down situation because they were going to get McCaffrey back. This wasn't a situation where McCaffrey's out for the year.
This is open, right? It's a 2-year deal.
Oh yeah. I mean, this is a Mostert type situation.
This is a second career for Mike Davis.
Correct.
He got to the NFL and my life is changing fringe came all the way back. I mean, there were a lot of people that liked him out of South Carolina. He was early day 3 with the 49ers, and he didn't do a whole lot and changed some teams. But man, I remember us talking about it, last August. Mike Davis, like, this is, we had Jordan Scarlett there, Reggie Bonifant, and things clarified relatively quickly. And then McCaffrey goes down a couple weeks later or something. So
yeah, there's some horrible deals on the sell side of Davis that I'm just looking at. I'm just looking through the trade finder, and it's like, One that's actually interesting was Ben for Mike Davis. So thought that's an interesting sort of pivot depending on what your team need is. Him for a second, him in multiple force for a second, him for 302. That just seems like a disaster. That's a pending disaster at 302.
People throw away. Can I just? I mean, this is a sidebar because Mike Davis is higher than that. But guys like Gus Edwards and Madison, or to some degree AJ Dillon. I mean, not really Pollard. It seems like Pollard has more name cachet and juice than some of the other ones I just mentioned. But the marketplace just underrates the running back that can crush things if things go right. This is still an offseason where you can pay. I mean, I think last offseason I paid a couple for Latavius Murray. Like, you can still get, deals like that where you're paying thirds, fourths for guys that can change your season, and running backs that can play. And Mike Davis is above that. But the fact that there's still skepticism about Mike Davis, he's not even in the backup role. This isn't like Gus Edwards where people are like, I don't know. Like, I actually think Gus Edwards is going to be like flex viable, regardless of what happens with Dobbins. Like, I think they're just going to run the ball through those two guys and they're going to have fun. So I just think that people would rather have that ooey gooey wide receiver potential breakout guy instead of that on their roster. And that's just a global landscape observation.
Oh yeah, because you can't brag about it on Twitter. The other thing I would say is when you look at what the value of a future second is, it's about a third of a win over the course of the next 3 years. Mike Davis could do that in 4 weeks.
Yeah, a third in 3 years.
Right. Yeah. I mean, Mike Davis can do that, and especially in a bad class like this. I mean, it's just to me, it's a smash situation.
This is Chad Parsons, Jordan McNamara, episode 54 of the Football Guys Dynasty Show. If you're into shows like this one, you're a serious fantasy player. We've got all of our rankings up. We've got projections to start the year. We've got a streamlined process so you can track NFL depth charts, and you can connect all your teams with the My Football Guys section of the site. We've got articles flowing, collaborative efforts where you're going to get. Right now, we're on rookies across all the positions, including some IDP. And again, this is going to be throughout the offseason. It's very busy. I'm working on a commissioner series right now. So if you're getting into the environment of starting a league, if you're just becoming a commissioner, all the things you're going to have to consider in that series. But it's going to be in-depth content that, number one, saves you time. Number two, gets you the edge you need to have your best season and best results yet. And right now, there's that early bird discount. Only goes on for another month or two before everything goes behind the paywall. Much of the site goes beyond the paywall. And again, when crunch time gets July, August, and into the season, that's when you're going to be want to be inside the circle there. And there's a big orange button right side of the homepage. Join now, and that's when you're going to get that early bird discount pricing. So we'll do the work, and you do the winning. Dynasty trade time. Got some interesting ones for this week. And actually, we're starting out. Mike Davis. We already discussed this, so we'll just say this in passing. But Mike Davis for 203 and a one quarterback. If it's super flex, obviously that looks better. But 203, aim better, do better. And frankly, with Mike Davis, how about you just enjoy the fact that he's probably running back 4 or 5 on your roster, and you're sitting there and get to August, get to September, and know this could be a really great ride.
Yeah, smash Mike Davis.
Yep. All right. And how about this? There's a big discussion going on in the Shark Pool this week about, cashing in the older, productive wide receivers. You want to be ahead of the game. The 28, 29-year-olds. You want to make sure you cash out for big value. And this trade actually prompted that. But they also talked about turning back the clock at wide receiver itself. But this was in a one quarterback, 106. And they traded DeAndre Hopkins for Kyle Pitts. So it was 106, and the pick was Kyle Pitts. How cute is this getting? If you're a contending team, if you're a rebuilding team, are you justifying going to Kyle Pitts here with DeAndre Hopkins being on a historic profile, 29? And again, to say that he couldn't be on a track of 2, 3, 4 more quality years, it's just, we predict demise, I think, with relative confidence with these all-time players, especially a guy like Hopkins.
I mean, couldn't you get couldn't you get back Hawkinson in the future first? Like if that's the angle that you want to go, couldn't you get more than Pitts? I don't know. That'd be my angle on it.
It's not too tight end, right? I mean, you're going to a position that if Pitts falls anything below like where we see with Kelsey or where Kittle was, 12 months ago, I mean, there's such a high bar for, you truly matter. I mean, does Mark Andrews in a one tight end right now going into 2021 truly matter? Let's be fair. I mean, what is that worth? Is anyone paying a first for a Mark Andrews type? Maybe if you find the absolute right person, but 106. I mean, so the Kyle Pitts thing is going to be a fascinating one. I'm sure we'll talk about him as the regular season goes, but I mean, Hopkins, just you're throwing him out. And I get the whole like, oh, you want to reset, you want to get young, you don't want to have the guy fall off. Hopkins, like I've seen this with Larry Fitzgerald and other guys before. They start drifting into their 30s, and every single, like Hopkins now is worth a mid first. Next year, he's worth a late first. The year after, you can only get a second for him. The year after that, you can only get a third for him. And every single year, you're probably going to sit there and go, I'll just keep Hopkins. That's not like the worst thing in the world to have part of your roster of guys where like, yeah, they're so good that I think the market is just lagging. And what I can get in young players or picks, it's not worth it. And that's okay. I think people run out, and they're trying to churn this out. The discussion was every single time you have an opportunity to shift from like a Hopkins to a CD Lamb type, year two player or or Jamar Chase, or you should do it. And that's how you stay good. I was like, how about you just keep good with your good players? I mean, I don't understand how you have to have 7 guys on your team that are below 23 years old and the next future studs. Is that mandatory? I'm very confused.
I mean, the odds that actually happens is pretty low. Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, the odds that Jamar Chase performs anything like what Hopkins could do this year
over the next 2 years. Yeah, exactly.
Right,
or
right.
warp, like you're talking about, right? Wins over replacement this year for Hopkins equals how many from game one? How many games does it take for Jamar Chase to get there? And then if he gets there, you beat the odds. You have is it possible? Sure. I mean, does he have a good profile? Yes. But to say it all comes together, I mean, what if he's good? Tua isn't. What if he's good, but 2 or 3 other players on the Dolphins are? What if he's good, but they're a run-first offense? What if he gets injured? What if he's actually not great?
Right.
What if Tua's good and Chase isn't?
You mean Burrow?
Yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, that is. Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Thank you. Stats and corrections. Yes. Yes.
No,
what
no,
if Burrow,
I agree.
Exactly. What if Burrow? Right. What if T. Higgins is better? Yeah, exactly. So there's a lot of variables to he's going to get all the way home and be one of those true tilt offenses, tilt dynasty alphas. Be very careful.
He's a top 10 dynasty wide receiver right now. That is just an alarming. that is a
considering
danger.
The litany of guys behind him, right?
Yeah, I mean, you've got we could go down the list, but there's a lot of profiles after him that project better than him over the next 5 years.
Well, that you can get plus. That's always the thing, right? I mean, you kind of mentioned it like, you can just get this guy plus. Exactly. Right. So you get, Mike Evans and those types where it's like, I get that plus a first. Oh, okay.
Right. Give me the couple Hall of Famers. Yeah, give me those guys.
Yeah, and along those lines with Joe Burrow and a 1 quarterback, he was traded for a 22 first. Again, not many quarterbacks are worth a first.
Give me the pick. Yeah. Joe Burrow was? That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And that team wasn't very good this year. All right, now this is an interesting one. I think I have a bead on what your take will be. Want to see if it aligns here. So 14 team, 1 quarterback. You got Justin Herbert and 112. So it's in that little ambiguous zone for Patrick Mahomes.
I knew that was what you were going to say. I didn't know what it was going to be, but I got those 2 things. Give me Mahomes.
Yeah.
Give me Mahomes.
It seems like a pretty easy price to pay, right? I mean, get the Oracle, and he's one of the few quarterbacks. I mean, could you have traded Herbert for Dak straight up? But again, keeping 112, if you're a good team, upgrading to the quarterback, it's sort of the finishing touch, right? It's almost like adding a Kelsey or adding, just adding that start one, at those onesie positions, that final just little piece.
Yeah, for sure.
Upside. Yeah. All right. Superflex. And this is reminiscent in a couple ways of a deal we did together, but Superflex, Russell Wilson for 105.
I'm not. I am. So I'm working on the smash urgency factor. So this is a new scale that I'm working on. I don't know if you're familiar with Parks and Recreation, but there's the Ron Swanson pyramid of greatness. I'm sort of working on the Jordan McNamara smash factor. This is run over
the stock shows where it's like, this is a double hammer by double bull. Is it kind of like that?
Yeah, this is a run over the toddler. No, this is a run over the newborn level of urgency. The toddler isn't quite as urgent. This is a run over the newborn. Yeah. Oh yeah. Well,
run over the newborn.
You got the newborn and you got. I'm still working on the exact hierarchy.
Is newborn higher than grandma?
It's tough, man. I mean, we gotta. I don't know. Life expectancy. You got to sort of figure those things out a little bit. But
opportunity cost. Where are we going? Where are we going? Tread lightly.
No, I mean, this is you you do this deal as fast as you can do this deal.
Well, and to point it out, we did a similar one in that we gave 106, which was Justin Fields, and again, 105 is going to be right in that. You're in a zone where, and we traded that for just Sean Watson. So again, if you want to, view it as, we have a little more risky side. I think we have a little more upside, to the bet we made. But that again, quarterback incoming versus the profile built of a Russell Wilson type, or in our case, Deshaun Watson. Again, you're eliminating a lot of downside for what could be that incoming player.
I think, by the way, I think Russell Wilson is, and he's going at what, quarterback 10, quarterback 11. I think he might be the most he might be the best value in all of Dynasty right now. So
over Watson.
Outside, well, Watson's the risk factor. But outside of Watson, I'll say that outside of the injury, the suspension, prison risk of Watson at the moment.
Yeah. Well, Wilson, you're right. And Wilson being like, I mean, how would he not play this year? You know what I mean? Like, so there's the probabilities that you include this year for Watson versus for Wilson is a different calculus. All right, last one quarterback league. So is this close to home for you with the Bills here? And also saying, well, what if Tom Brady's a pretty big upgrade for you? And would you do it right now? One quarterback, we got Zach Moss for Tom Brady.
I'm just not sure how Zach Moss makes a difference. I mean, that's like a third round rookie pick cost for Tom Brady. I mean, if Brady makes a difference for you, I think it's fine. Because I think it's fine. I don't think Zach Moss, even if Singletary retired tomorrow, I'm not sure Zach Moss makes that big of a difference, to be honest with you.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, it does. I'm just kind of debating the time factor of this. That I'm not saying obviously you can get way better, like, oh, all of a sudden you get Brady in a second, in August. Right. But like, I'm just wondering, so like the situation where Brady is like a big upgrade for you, and that's really the only ones you should be making in one quarterback. So I'm kind of wondering, maybe if you didn't really have much of anything, and maybe you have a young quarterback like Trey Lance or something, you're not quite sure if you even have a starter at this point. You bring in Brady, that's a really nice combo, of young and then, obviously Brady for now that can bridge the gap. But yeah, I almost wonder though. I mean, again, Moss was the red zone guy last year. It kind of feels like with one quarterback, and if you're buying, you got a ton of options. Like you have a ton of options. I mean, there's some team out there that has 2-3 good quarterbacks, and not saying Brady isn't one of them. I just kind of wonder that few can get someone to buy a quarterback. So right. I just kind of wonder if this was the best bang for your buck. And I do like Brady. So yeah. I just kind of wonder. All right, let's get to quotes from the Football Guys Dynasty Forum this week. You can venture over to those completed Dynasty trades. That's where I get a lot of this from. There's some great discussion in there. Highly recommend it. Don't need to be a subscriber or anything. You can go on and register for that Shark Pool and forum over at footballguys.com. All right, so this is a kind of in line, 2 or 3 of these things with what I was talking about earlier about that age factor, people not wanting to get caught holding the bag with an older player at wide receiver. One quote, 29 for a wide receiver means you don't have a lot, if any, top-level seasons left.
I just don't think that's true. I do think there's a difference between guys that are higher end pedigree historically, sort of on that arc. The guys that tend to fall off are the guys that tend to be lower pedigree. That's historically been a trend that I've picked up in that data. So
Miles Austin.
Jordy Nelson's a good example of this. That even though they reached really elite heights, it's been the guys with lesser pedigree that have fallen off at that sort of 30, 31, 32 in there. You can see the guys, the Fitzgeralds, all these guys, you can see them sort of go with the high end pedigree, go deeper into their 30s. Julio's a guy that, assuming health, right, I can see him playing, he's going to be one of those players that just never is more expensive than he is right now. And you just ride it out. But that could be, 2, 3, 4 more years. And when everyone was writing him off this year, right? Those things, the more I study this, the less those things surprise me.
The Jason Witten, the Antonio Gates, the Larry Fitzgerald, or Steve, the rules of you just keep writing them off, but the ones that churn it out, it's printing money. That right. When it gets to the point, I mean, people now, is anyone really paying? I think I saw 1 or 2 trades of Julio for a first, but it's really being sparse this off season. And all he does is put up numbers. So this goes back to, again, the Hopkins and Pitts deal. I don't claim the ability to know if Pitts will be the real deal, but it's unlikely that Hopkins has more than 1 year of top 10 or 20 production yet left. So I think people just assume, and we almost do the opposite, right? That if they're still on positive production tracks, like assume they're going to. Because of their profile. I mean, these guys that produce 5, 6, 7, 8, top 24 years, top 12 years, be really, really careful. That's what we call like all-timers. And by all-timers, I mean, when we're looking at the prism of the last 10, 15, 20 years, like they've been one of the guys. Put a short list together. Who's been really productive at wide receiver? Write those guys off. And you want to be early. Well, you might be early.
Right.
You might be early.
Yeah.
This year is kind of important too. All right. I remember an analysis that showed a wide receiver who is still producing as a wide receiver 1 at age 29, 30 actually tends to continue to produce. This is part of the argument there. Produce for another 2 to 4 years. You just said that exact same thing.
Huh.
Maybe they read your study.
Yeah, all right. Sounds like something I've written. So
exactly. And last one, this is about the Cowboys situation. Everyone wants to poo-poo, shift words here, on Amari Cooper. But he was the wide receiver 1 in fantasy after Dak's full 4 games, and while he was drawing more difficult coverage. So yes, CeeDee Lamb is coming along, but Cooper already arrived, and I'm in the camp that still thinks Cooper is more talented, not more valued, but more talented. Dallas is going to be an interesting one this year with how highly Lamb is valued and how Cooper is not. And Gallup is like, go sit over there.
Yeah, I wrote that under a pen name. So that was me.
That was you.
It's signed me.
JM in ink. Got a little avatar there. Guy poking up over a sand dune. Oh,
yeah. I fully endorse that. I think
Cooper for the win this year. If Dak comes back and he is good to go to start the year, and all signs and reports are on that track, exactly. I mean, I remember that opening month, Michael Gallup was top 40. And Lamb was in the top 25 or so, and Cooper was right there, grade A, number 1.
Yeah.
So,
and I'll say, like, he has, like, CeeDee Lamb has work to do to be the wide receiver 2 on that team. He was the clear-cut wide receiver 3 in terms of snaps by like multiple games last year. Like, that's how big the difference was in terms of how much less he was playing than Michael Gallup. How much less he was playing than Amari Cooper. I listen, if you're if we talked about Russell Wilson and Watson being the 2 best values in all of Dynasty, I think the most dangerous one is probably CeeDee Lamb, just because there is so much there's no
assumptions. So much assumptions and projections of what he hasn't done so far. Is he on the success track? Yes. He is absolutely on the success failure track. He's on the success one after the first year. Now, success does not mean future perennial. And let's even look at the guys that you think have been quote unquote bulletproof. They still have dips. They still have all along the way. I mean, look at a guy like Keenan Allen. He churns it out, right? Well, he's had some ups and downs, that people want to not write him off, but certainly decrease him heavily of like, oh, this is the beginning of the end. Big down year. Be careful. But yeah, I mean, I think just within that Dallas ecosystem, there's a lot of, like, I think Gallup's underrated. Obviously, Cooper. I think Lamb is probably a little overrated, but we could get to 2022 and life is good for Lamb. Now, there's some projections to be had, like you said, to move up there. I always just think, again, you're projecting that he's going to be great. But if he already is valued at great, and that's my big problem with Cam Akers. Like, you're assuming he is great on a very sparse sample size, and it's not that he was a first-round pick, and yes, that matters. And it just... So Lamb is sort of, he was drafted round 1, and I get that. And Dallas took best player available right there. They didn't need wide receiver, quote unquote. So all good. But it's a loaded passing game, and Zeke is going to bounce back too. And so there's a lot of variance within that offense. So be careful how you are valuing where the variance goes.
Yes.
All right. So in this episode, we discussed Kadarius Toney. We discussed Amon-Ra St. Brown. We talked about trading for quarterbacks in a one quarterback format where it makes sense to maybe upgrade all the way to Patrick Mahomes. Russell Wilson in Superflex. We talked about little Tom Brady. Mike Davis. Didn't know we were going to talk about Mike Davis, but it's a Chad and Jordan show, so that's never out of bounds. Probably talk about him a couple more times before we get to the season here.
Might get a T-shirt made with his quads on it.
Exactly. Just from the quads down. Yeah. And we also talked about, again, risky profiles when it doesn't make sense to take on that risk. And not always is it always time to run away from the 27, 28, 29-year-old wide receiver based on their profile. I am Chad Parsons. He is Jordan McNamara. And until next time, good luck in your Dynasty leagues.